Alright, so I'm gonna respond to some comments, and there we go. So I found like a feature in YouTube where you can have a list of the most recent comments that you've not responded to, because I kept losing them. But I can't open YouTube Studio and the camera at the same time, so I screenshotted them. So I'm going to read this tiny little box of comments here with my not incredible eyesight, and respond to them so that I don't have to sit and type them out. So I'll do them the way they're put out. So I'll do them from most recent to least recent. Should probably do it the other way, but this is easier for me. So first one is from Daniel Boomers. So Daniel says, so I think this is a continuation of another comment thread. Daniel says, you still have the urge to talk? Why you continue the suffering? Those are just other ideas we make up to convince ourselves that we know the game. We know nothing because we never had a thought of our own. Okay. So you still have the urge to talk? Yeah, you're right, it's weird. It's weird from the point of view of the mind, because the mind works in duality. The mind works in the mind will notice incongruences, and I've made a point of frequently mentioning this in my videos to bring that into awareness, to bring that into consciousness, that when the mind notices an incongruence, and when I'm talking about this, by default, it's going to be filled with incongruences, it's going to be filled with inconsistencies and kind of statements that cancel each other out. It's going to sound not right at times. It's going to be filled with inconsistencies. But you can be sure that when an incongruence is noticed, that it's noticed from the point of view of the mind. What I'm pointing to is non-dual. What I'm pointing to has no incongruences, isn't in the world of this or that, isn't in the world of inconsistency, not completeness, isn't in the world of duality. The only thing that can notice an incongruence or something that doesn't make sense is the mind. But you're quite right. Why you continue the suffering? Those are just other ideas you make up to convince. So, are you asking me, or are you telling me? Because if you're telling me, then I'm gonna have to agree. If you're asking me, then my answer will be different. So I think what you've done there is you've pointed out, potentially, an incompatibility between yourself and myself in terms of transmitting or communicating this message. And I think the reason for that is that I reckon that you're probably a head guy. I'm a head guy, or at least I was a head guy, but an intellectual or an intellect person, and the tendencies, the personality tendencies of that continue on as part of the expression of the apparent individual. So I'm definitely a head guy. So the way I point at this is very obviously completely language based. So that's flawed from the offset. Is probably involves way too many words, way too many conceptual statements. And when you're a head guy like me, the headiness in me will rev up the headiness in you, and the mind will come online, and it will start talking. It'll start going, is it this or that? But what about this? But what about that? Blah, 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 blah. Just continue to talk. So maybe this message in the way it's put across here isn't compatible with you as an individual. So I would probably suggest, if you're willing to hear it, I would suggest a female non-duality speaker or pointer could be quite effective at bypassing that kind of masculine intellect, that headiness. So if I'm going to talk to you now as David's intellect talking to Daniel intellect, right? And so imagine we are business partners and we are discussing ideas. So both of our intellects, David's intellect and Daniel's intellect, are going to come together, and we're going to debate about concepts and stuff like that. We're going to talk about ideas. And so our intellects come together, they join forces into one intellectual team, and in doing that we then debate about the best thing to do, the best business plan or whatever. And in doing that, as we join intellects, we progressively find flaws in our business plan and highlight them, and find and create ideas that are effective. And doing that, we're joining intellects, and we're moving towards a truth, an ideal. So that's fine in the conventional sense, and David's intellect and Daniel's intellect might make an incredibly powerful intellectual entity when put together. But even combined, as potent as that team might be, in this that I'm talking about, the David and Daniel have been defeated before they've even begun. Because as you quite rightly pointed out in the last part of that comment, they didn't exist in the first place, so how did they even stand a chance? How did they even stand a chance? It's a losing game when we approach this from the intellect. If that makes any sense. So I would suggest this, and also for anyone who is very intellectually inclined, right? Is very thought based, like myself. I benefited a lot from taking, let's say, teachings or pointings from more emotions based. I'm not trying to reinforce stereotypes here. This is go and have a look for yourself and see what you think. But more emotional or energetic based pointing, and the female non-duality speakers seem to be more inclined to that style of pointing, and it seems to be effective for bypassing that kind of the masculine energy of intellect, objective intellectual thinking, which exists in all of us to a degree. So that might not just be a male-female thing, of course, but the patterns are recognizable. And I would suggest as well that when we cling on to concepts, thought forms, and intellectual understanding, what we're avoiding is the emotions anyway. So if we can just bypass that whole thing, it can be quite effective. An example for me, a long time ago, I had a kind of romantic relationship and we split up. And I remember lying in bed, just I could not stop my mind, because I was just thinking. I just couldn't stop it, and it was non-stop. So my head, I was lying in bed, and my head was like blah, 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 talking about all these scenarios and worries and so on. But what now I can see what I was doing by being up here, let's say in the head, was avoiding the emotions down here, directly avoiding or obscuring the emotions. That's why the head was talking so much, because it was trying to distract attention from this horrible feeling that I had with breaking up with this woman, who I was attached to. So I would say when the head won't shut up, even if you want it to, move the attention into the sensations, move the attention directly into the emotions. Or you could even try and describe with the mind what the emotion feels like. So you're directing attention towards the emotion. That's a good thing to try. Anyway, what's the next one? So, nope, not enough. It says it's a middle game and I keep forgetting. I wonder if I want to forget. So I know what you mean. The forgetting is, it's not like, I wouldn't say it's like you want to forget. Maybe it is, but I would say it's a habit. It just happens. It happens as a response to something. So for example, with the previous thing I said there with the emotions come up and then the thoughts appear, like automatically, to direct attention away from the uncomfortableness of the emotions. I guess in that you could say that there's a desire for me to avoid emotions, but it's not quite a conscious thing. It's an unconscious pattern that just happens, that just has been built up through conditioning. But yeah, like the middle way thing is good, because as soon as you recognise, like I said in the previous comment, an incongruence or something, a not rightness, something doesn't make sense, is it this or is it that, you can recognise that immediately as the mind, because the middle way has no opposites. There are no opposites. There are no opposites in the senses. There are no opposites in emotion. The only place where opposites exist or duality exists is the mind. So it's a very kind of direct way to approach it, which can be very, very effective. I'm gonna have to go to the next one. Okay, so this is Ben. Ben says the space between the words is so strong in this one. Yeah, so I think I already responded to one of these in the text, and I think it was talking about this just silence between words, or the silence behind words. So again, there's a distinction there initially between the mind thinking and then the space between them, or the thought, or the stillness behind the thought. Eventually it becomes apparent that, the thought is the stillness as well. The thought is the space as well. The thought is non-dual. I think you asked about this before, Ben, about I think this was you, about the distinction between relative and absolute, the paradox there, the incongruence there between the relative world and absolute reality, spirituality, let's say, and normal life, and there isn't one. The only thing that makes it seem like that is a distinction created by the mind. It's thought. And I think you pointed this out quite well in your previous comment. Sorry I didn't send anything yet, by the way, still building up to that one. Yeah, there's no rush. Finding the space within myself to express the non-conceptual. Yeah, it will come. It's a weird one. When you might not even be inclined to talk about it. I'm inclined to talk about it for whatever reason. Probably because I was talking about it when I went through it, or I have a very kind of language-based mind, so I enjoy language. I enjoy expression through language. I enjoy stories and stuff like that. It's very much like a personality thing. Different people choose to express this in different ways, and probably the truest expression would be no words at all, as Daniel pointed out quite rightly. The truest expression of this is just not talking about it. And it is kind of weird that I'm talking about it, and I do recognise that. But if it's going to express, it might not express through words. It might express in something else. I think you are, this is just a guess, but you're quite oriented towards language as well. So it might come up that way. It might come through music. I would say a medium might just be something that you enjoy expressing anyway, which for yourself would be, I think, music. So, or poetry or whatever. So if you, just like you're saying, sit in that space. If it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. My earlier videos, I think there were lots of giant gaps, and there might still be giant gaps in content, and there were many times where I sat down to film a video and there's nothing came out. And then sometimes I talk a lot, like probably this video. So yeah, there are no rules to this. Just let it flow the way it flows. But also, yeah, there's no accountability and no rush, obviously. Just take your time with it. So Nothing Is Anne says, thank you, David. So far I've listened to your previous video 4 times. Oh, it's a lot of it's a lot of time there. Each time something new emerges out of it. Amazing, simply this. Yeah, it's weird that way, isn't it? Like I've explained before, so many times I've heard something a million times, and then you just hear it that one time, and it hits. It's almost like the mind gets out of the road, and if you pay attention, it's not coming from the language. It's not coming from the mind. Pardon me. It's paradoxical. It's not coming from an interpretation of the information as a person. It's hard to describe where it comes from, but it doesn't come from the information. It doesn't come from the content of what's being described. It comes from something else. Initially, the mind will construct an interpretation around that. It makes it look like this teaching or this way of hearing or talking triggered this insight, this recognition or whatever. But that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening, which is paradoxical. But when this recognition hits you, you start noticing it, not just in the spiritual teachings or whatever, or the non-dual speakings or whatever. You start noticing it constantly everywhere. So then you realise that the spiritual teaching is accessible infinitely, and it's everywhere. It's not confined to someone who's talking about it, or not confined to a text or something like that. So then we're free to just look for it everywhere and anywhere, because everything is a spiritual teacher. What's important about it is that recognition, where you could say comes from within, but within in this context is nowhere and everywhere at the same time. So okay, let's move on. So one party, Roule, don't want to mispronounce that. It says, thank you for the prompts. It's helpful how different people, language they are experiencing differently, yeah. And it impresses upon me differently at different times. So yeah, same point there. Like even the same words spoken by a different person in a different content connects and resonates in different ways, and there's a feeling that acknowledgement is being reaffirmed and something's being reconditioned over time. Sorry, this writing is tiny. As much as I'd like to be an Eckhart Tolle and seemingly have everything happen at once, this hasn't happened yet, but I figure incremental is better than no realization process at all. It's like getting gulps of air. Yeah, so I would say, so the way I phrased this in my earlier videos, it would be completely different from the way I would talk about it now. So this is definitely my experience relatively as well, and I think the way I framed it was those recognitions of the presence, the silence, the stillness, the peace. I framed it in time, so I framed it like there was a recognition here, an experience that lasted this long, and then let's say back into identification, and then there was another recognition, and I framed it like those gaps joined, and when the gaps joined, then that was the shift. That's how I talked about it back there, but I talked about it that way because I was talking about it from a personal position in a timeline. That's the only way I could really talk about it then. It's changed now, so now I talk about it reverse. So I say all there is awakening, all there is awakeness, and what obscures it is that timeline of the person that seems to have a experience of clarity, or a breath of air that seems to have to be reconditioned to get itself out the road to make space for the clarity of this recognition. I would say in that relative timeline, all of that distinction, all of that duality between the recognition, the awakening, and the personal story of the person that's not awakened, it thins. The distinction becomes less distinguishable, and that's when the mind will generate stories about it to try and distinguish this and that, to try and place itself into that timeline and figure out where it is in that, or figure out how it relates to this and that, and eventually that it's just let go of, and then all there is awakeness, and it becomes very simple. But that was exactly my experience as well. Let me have a look at that again. Yeah, resonate in different ways. So it seems like there are different. It seems like there are different realizations and stages and recognitions and stuff like that There's like this realization and that realization, and they're different and they came at different times and stuff like that. But I would say what's more important is what you that recognition of a weakness, that recognition of whatever you want to call it, that you now know you can, even the person seems like it can identify it, but that's not what's happening. That recognition, that taste, that flavour of that kind of has no taste, has no flavour, is mysterious. It's just that all the way, and that's it. That all the way, and that's it. And it might appear like different recognitions with their different qualities, but it's always the recognition, the one awakeness, the one aware, non-conceptual knowingness, beingness. If we can, I'm going to say, consciously connect with that or consciously recognize that, probably bad way of saying it because it's not doing, it's not like something you do. Bring that into daily life beyond the distinctions as much as possible. And it just continues to clarify infinitely in ways that the mind couldn't even believe, that referential position couldn't even reference, because it just doesn't make any sense to the mind. But yeah, that relative story becomes less and less real, and that space, that piece behind, comes more into the forefront of experience. Let's say all the time being always right here. I think that might be all of them for now. Let me just check and see. I think there's another one here. So yeah, I'll not go into that one just now. But anyway, that'll do it for now, and I'll talk to you next time.